It's the Wilk Report. I'm Michael Wilk, coming to you from Cleveland, Ohio, with an epic review of an epic show, The Orville, Season 2, Episode 13, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And it's a time travel episode that is very reminiscent of Episode 150 of Star Trek The Next Generation, called Second Chances. And if you remember that show from the early 90s, the episode was about Commander Riker facing a quantum duplicate of himself. Basically, there was a transporter accident that created a double of him on an away team mission. The double was stranded on a planet like 8 years prior. And, you know, when the Enterprise returns to that place on a mission, they go down to investigate because they're getting some kind of like distress signal from there. And there's no reason to be because it was evacuated. But they discover the quantum duplicate of Commander Riker, who's still just a lieutenant at this time. And then, of course, drama ensues there. So this is very similar. But as you will see, things will play out. So just to give you fair warning here, if you have not seen this, then I suggest you turn this video off right now. Go back and watch episode 13, and then come back and watch this. But if you have seen it, or you don't care about spoilers, and carry on. But just consider yourself forewarned. So, let's get to the slideshow presentation here. So we start off in the lounge. Kelly and Ed are regaling Gordon and Tala with the story of Ed and Kelly's first date, and this is something that they remember quite fondly. Ed brings up the possibility that, he's still open to him and Kelly rekindling their relationship, but Kelly kind of like shoots him down again, saying, the reasons why their marriage ended, and it was a great time in their lives, but it's over. And picking up again would just be too awkward with her being his first officer. So while this is going on, John and Isaac are fiddling with the recreation of the time travel device we saw in the first episode of season 1. Isaac theorizes that they can travel through time, and that the device can sync up with a person's thoughts to do it. So Kelly shows up and reminds John that he's got another duty that he has to attend to. There's a distortion that the ship comes into, and it turns out it's like some kind of like gravity distortion that John theorizes is caused by a natural phenomenon, probably a neutron star collision. Things are about to get weird here because Isaac discovers another Kelly in the room just like seconds after older Kelly has left. And it turns out she's a younger version of Kelly pulled into the present from the past, specifically 7 years in the past, from the time that Ed and Kelly had their first date. And so, this is a direct result of the time travel device that Isaac was working on being hyper-stimulated by the gravity distortion. So, obviously, Kelly and Ed, when they show up to investigate, older Kelly is weirded out. Younger Kelly is like, whoa. Yeah. So you can see from expressions, older Kelly is like, who are you? And, Claire states, look, this is you, a younger you from the past, pulled into the present, which, of course, Kelly has no memory of, but we'll get to that later. So this is a pretty awkward situation because it's not every day you're confronted with yourself, literally. So, things are about to get weird. So Isaac and John theorize that the gravity distortion kicked the time travel device into high gear, and that because Kelly was thinking about her first date with Ed, it used her thoughts to pull the past version of herself into the present. It figures that, because time travel is so complicated, they don't know if having her there will alter the past, so they decided it's just better to tell her the truth about her future, because she's going to find out anyway. So Ed and Kelly sit her down and explain what's happened over the last 7 years, their marriage, that it didn't last, they got divorced, and so yeah, because she's going to be there for who knows how long, they put her up with her own quarters. She bonds with Tala. Gordon is remarking how all this might affect the timeline. Ed says he would rather chew broken glass and discuss the logic of time travel and paradoxes, which, they can get pretty complicated. And that's I can't help but feel that this is a not so subtle dig at STD for its all over the place time travel bullshit. But anyway, John and Isaac say that because they have no way, they basically say that they have no way of getting past Kelly back to her own time because of the nature of the accident. They can't replicate it. So anyway, younger Kelly is bonding with the rest of the bridge crew and John, and relating old drinking stories. Basically trying to fit in. She's been given a uniform from the medical division. She's also a lieutenant, whereas Kelly's a commander. So yeah, the definite parallel between this and Second Chances. So older Kelly kind of dresses younger Kelly down for saying stuff like this because, and it's a legitimate reason, because you're basically undermining her as a commander by diminishing the crew's respect for her, because she's acting in a way that because there are two Kellys and one's from the past, and she's kind of like not comfortable with it. But younger Kelly has a proposal here, which Kelly is not exactly thrilled by. She wants to stay aboard the Orville, and you can't really blame her for this, because it's not like she can go back to Earth and pick up her life where it left off. And as far as she knows, this is the only place that she is really familiar with outside of her old life. And Kelly's like, might not be a good idea, but they agree to try and make this work, saying that younger Kelly has herself to confide in. Meanwhile, in Ed's quarters, he's playing a video game with Gordon. He's having trouble because he can't figure out the PlayStation Lite controls. So, Ed's getting his butt kicked in holographic video games. And I actually like this, how the future is here, and it's not that different from today. But younger Kelly shows up in Ed's quarters and says she wants to pick up where they left off. How she had a really good time on that date from her perspective the other day. And Ed's like, all right, this is tempting. Really tempting, because Ed still wants to rekindle things with Kelly, but present day Kelly won't do it. So he asks if it's okay if he can date past Kelly and try and have a do-over. Kelly's like, she thinks it's a bad idea, but she basically indicates she can't really stop Ed from doing this, but warns him that dating her younger self probably won't, he probably won't find it as nice as he thinks. So Ed and younger Kelly hit it off. She gets him drunk, and they kiss in front of her quarters. Older Kelly confronts younger Kelly about this, saying, look, the way the marriage ended, it really kind of messed them both up, and she doesn't want to see history repeat itself. Younger Kelly insists it's not going to repeat itself because I'm not going to make the same mistakes that you did. And then she has the unmitigated gall to say, like, look, my life is not where I wanted it to be 7 years from now, and it's kind of all your fault because you messed everything up. And younger Kelly's really not settled. She's unsettled by all this. Which anyone would be if you're. I mean, imagine if you had a chance to talk to your younger self and tell that person you used to be what would happen, and your younger self would likely be, yeah. So things are going bad, and they go from bad to worse when Bortus informs the bridge crew that a couple of Kalon vessels have picked up the Orville, and they managed to evade it for the time being. So later on, Ed and Gordon are talking about how things are going with him and younger Kelly, and Gordon's kind of like saying the same thing that older Kelly said to younger Kelly, which is like, look, I think this is a bad idea. This messed you up badly. I don't want to have to pick up the pieces again. But then younger Kelly comes along and invites Ed and Gordon and the rest of the bridge crew to the simulator in a recreation of this nightclub that she used to like hanging out in. And Tella and younger Kelly are having a good time. They're dancing, and but Ed and Gordon are like, they're being a couple of dads here. They can't hear anything that's being said. Nobody can hear anything they say. There's a running joke where it's like they keep trying to say something, and everyone's saying like, "Oh yeah, the bathroom's that way." If it's getting down, in a really hilarious scene. I mean, I wish it would show more of Yaphet, but special effects limitations kind of limit that. And of course, Bortus and Clyden are having a great time. Apparently, the music is very similar to a Mocklin mating song back home. So they're dancing like, complete morons. It's really hilarious, and I love this scene. This is probably one of my favorite parts of the episode. And it's, really starting to rethink this whole attempt to rekindle things with past Kelly. Because he realizes, just how much he's changed, while she hasn't yet. So older Kelly is having a conversation with Dr. Finn about the things that younger Kelly said to her, and she reminds, she kind of says, how this whole situation sucks. Having to be in the same place as your younger self, and Dr. Finn reminds older Kelly that, it's good to actually be confronted every once in a while and kind of like take stock and, reevaluate what you want out of life like this. So anyway, younger Kelly tries to seduce Ed into going to bed with her, but older Ed is not as enthusiastic about this prospect as it was just a short while ago. So, he's basically like, yeah, I'm sorry, this isn't going to work out. I'm a different person than I was 7 years ago, and I'm still in love with present Kelly. Which kind of bums out past Kelly, because she really likes Ed and wanted to see if she could make things work where her future self couldn't. And this is, again, it's very touching storytelling. But then, of course, it gets called to the bridge. The Kalon vessels have picked up their trail. They zero in on this glass of ice, which actually comes up. And I really like how this plays out, because it shows younger Kelly is not so different from older Kelly as we thought. So Ed and the bridge crew come aboard to assess the bridge to assess the situation. Gordon's like, we can't outrun a Kalon ship. And younger Kelly comes onto the bridge with an idea to hide in the rings of a gas giant that's nearby and vent all the water, as much water as they can from the ship, and cover it in ice. Okay, and it's starting over again. All right. All right, so, yeah, so the whole thing really, I think, works out because, in fact, let me see if I can get these technical difficulties worked out. I'm not going to stop and re-record every time this fails to happen. So I'm going to just ask you to bear with me while I try and fix this. So, younger Kelly, like I said, proposes that they hide inside the rings of a gas giant and use the Orville's water to create a layer of ice. And here we are. So, older Kelly remembers that, her younger self wrote a paper on how this might be done, because the rings of the gas giant are basically big snowballs, and so they vent all the, as much of the Orville's water. The Kalon ships show up. They split off their primary tracking units, because the ships can break off into two pieces, like with a smaller fighter-sized craft. And so they start patrolling the rings of the gas giant, trying to find the Orville, but it's covered in ice and they've powered down. So they basically are blending in. And this is how they manage to evade the Kalon. And younger Kelly actually saved the day here. And really kind of proves her worth. So later on, younger Kelly goes to apologize to older Kelly, who says, I was just about to thank you for getting us out of this, so we're even. Then John and Isaac show up and say that they think they figured out a way to send younger Kelly back, but it's going to involve having to use up pretty much all the power that the Orville has, and then some. Younger Kelly says, well, this is going to work because it already has worked, because older Kelly doesn't remember any of this. So they decide, despite the risks to the ship, they're going to give it a try. So older Kelly says her goodbyes to younger Kelly, and, the two of them make their peace with one another. And then here comes a bit that kind of deviates and sets up the action for next week's episode, season ender. Ed apologizes to younger Kelly for all the things that he's going to put her through when she gets back to the past. And of course, Dr. Finn gives her something to wipe her memory of everything she's experienced aboard the Orville. So Isaac begins the preparations. They start taking power from the ship's quantum drive to try and power up the time travel device. And younger Kelly wakes up back in her apartment on Earth, 7 years in the past, and she's looking around like, whoa, what just happened? And it's kind of ambiguous as to whether she remembers everything after all, or it's just going on instinct. Anyway, she gets a call from younger Ed, trying to say, hey, I had a great time. I'd like to do a second date. And younger Kelly does something unexpected. She goes ahead and turns him down and says, this just isn't going to work out. So, a lot of questions raised here. It's like, if you have foreknowledge of the future, would you try and change it? Hence the title. It's like, because obviously this is going to change everything. All right, because it's not quite clear as to whether this is creating a second timeline, or if it's going to cause changes in the present timeline, because time travel and paradoxes, it's complicated. So, but I really kind of like how this episode played out. It does seem, I will admit, it seems like much more of a filler episode than last week's episode called Sanctuary. I know Mecha Random last week in her review said that last week's episode felt like a filler episode, and I was like, well, if this is a filler episode, then what a filler episode. But this one kind of seemed more like a filler episode than last week's, because last week's at least advanced the it kind of advanced the development of the Mocklin storyline, which has been running periodically throughout the show so far. And with this one, it seems like this episode was really primarily to set up for the season finale. And we still have not gotten an announcement of season 3 yet. And I'm just biting my nails here because I really want this show to go ahead and succeed. And I want it to get a 3rd season. And I don't want the Orville to not get renewed and have to suffer through a 3rd season of STD. Because that would be just unbelievably bad. So, yeah, Fox, please renew the Orville. So, but yeah, like I said, this kind of sets things up because are we going to see consequences? Well, yeah, because a teaser episode from last night's episode suggests that we are going to see the consequences of younger Kelly's decision to change the future. Well, what from her perspective is the future. But let's go ahead and read Heavy.com's review of last night's episode. The Orville Season 2, Episode 13 ending explained of timelines and fractures. And they go ahead and talk about the Next Generation episode, Second Chances. An experiment by Isaac ends with the Orville accidentally picking up Kelly from 7 years in the past. Throughout the episode, we're left wondering if she's from a fractured timeline or parallel universe, or if she's from the same timeline and it's imperative to send her back or everything will change. Well, obviously, the ending doesn't give us a clear-cut answer. In fact, we won't know if the timeline changed until next week's Season 2 finale. And the episode was reminiscent of Next Generation Second Chances, and they've got a gif under there, Tom Riker right about now. And this is so funny. I love this one. So, yeah, that's why I picked this article here. But, yeah, so, yeah, this basically, and Larry Bernard, my co-host for many of our shows here, has pointed out how the Orville tells many of the same stories that Star Trek The Next Generation did, only better. And to the extent that he is right about this, because I don't know if I could say it's better or worse myself, certainly differently. But it does it in a way where, again, it goes to that hybrid method of storytelling between the standalone episodes of the 1980s and before, where because of the realities of syndication, episodes of a show would be aired out of order in syndication, and so you had to have a self-contained episode and not really show the consequences. And then during the 90s, we saw a transition away from that to more serialized storytelling that did require you to see earlier episodes. And so the Orville is kind of like in that hybrid mode where of the 90s where, yeah, you do actually see consequences stemming from earlier episodes, but they're still self-contained stories. So, yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how all this plays out next week. And I really am looking forward to this. I'm going to give you my review, obviously, next week. But yeah, I'm definitely nail-biting here. So, but yeah, so, the article by Heavy.com just really kind of rehashes everything I just said, so I won't really bore you with this. So, but, they do kind of explain the ending where, yeah, so Isaac figures out a way to send young Kelly back to the past, but it's risky. And she's also afraid she won't be able to handle the temptation of the knowledge of the future, so Dr. Finn offers to mind wipe her so she won't damage the timeline. After she's mind wiped, Ed apologizes for all the pain she's going to deal with from him in the coming 5 years. As an interesting note, although Ed was far too involved in his work, it seems like their marriage wasn't that terrible. If it hadn't been for the alien who was in heat and essentially controlled Kelly at the time, they likely would never have divorced to begin with, because she probably would never have cheated on Ed. Well, that I think is kind of debatable. I think the way they wrote the story between these two is that they would have gotten divorced anyway, and if it hadn't been Kelly, effectively ending the marriage by having an affair, then it might have been Ed doing something else to end it. So it just seems like they were doomed from the start. not to be married. So let's continue on with the article here. At the very end of the episode, young Kelly wakes up 7 years in the past, lying on the floor and very confused. It looks like Isaac's experiment worked, but then something unexpected happens. Just like he said, Ed calls Kelly early in the morning to ask for a second date. Older Kelly had told Ed that she thought about turning him down, but they had so much fun the night before that she decided to accept a second date. But young Kelly does something different. She actually turns Ed down and decides there's really no future for them. She takes a very different path than older Kelly did. So yeah, we're likely left with some very deliberately unanswered questions. So did the mind wipe work? Did it not work? Because if it did work and young Kelly simply had a subconscious feeling that she needed to turn Ed down because he had just rejected her in real life a few hours earlier, plus with all the future info she got about the marriage not lasting, this might have left something in her subconscious that drove her to turn him down. And of course, if it didn't work, then, her fears were confirmed that she let her knowledge of the future dictate her actions. So, either way, we're going to find out next week what happens. I'm certainly looking forward to all this. I hope you are too. That's pretty much it for this review of the Orville Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Join me next week for next week's review. So what are your thoughts on this episode? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Do you think it's making some not so subtle digs at STD for its poor handling of time travel? I certainly got that feeling. Which I kind of like that they're doing this and kind of subtly reminding us that, STD is really garbage when it comes to addressing stuff like this, because actual Star Trek was never this bad at time traveling. That whole thing with the Red Angel and the time crystals and everything, it's like the writers over on that show are pulling things out of their ass, and they know they are, and they expect us to be stupid enough to not realize what they're up to. So, as far as I'm concerned, STD can go suck it. But like I said, what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. If you like what you've heard and you want to hear more, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to receive notifications whenever we upload new content. And if you want to help support the channel, keep the lights on, bring you new content, head over to our Patreon or Subscribe Star page, become a donor. We can't do this without you. Until next time, this is Michael Wilk for the Wilk Report saying, take care, good night, I'm out.